Hello boys and girls, Adam Nicholas here for WhatCulture Wrestling, and with All In now in the rearview mirror, one of the most exciting things to come in the aftermath is a return to relevance for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Cody Rhodes did an incredible job in Chicago, and as the lead architect for the event, he was the top babyface on the pay-per-view, primed to defeat Nick Aldis for the 10 pounds of gold, etch his name into the history books alongside his father Dusty Rhodes, and be the man who would carry the belt all the way back into the mainstream. And on that note, because what could be more relevant and mainstream than being on a WhatCulture wrestling list, here's 10 things you didn't know about the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Number 10, the first 3 champions didn't win the title by pinfall. History in wrestling is perhaps slightly less prestigious than most promoters might have you believe. Inaugural champion Orville Brown was awarded the title in July 1948 when the recently founded NWA simply chose him to be the guy following his victory over Sonny Myers, who was then the Central States Heavyweight Champion. His reign lasted 501 days until a tragic automobile accident would end Brown's career in November 1949. Next, it would be iconic wrestling star Lou Thesz, who would be chosen to be Brown's successor. Lou Thesz had already won another version of the World's Heavyweight title that ran parallel to Brown's original reign, and so the unification happened when Lou Thesz won the Los Angeles Olympic Auditorium World Heavyweight Championship. 2,300 days later, just the 2,300 then, Lou Thesz would lose by disqualification in a 2 out of 3 falls match to Leo Nomellini in 1955. He did, however, win the rematch, which gave him the belt, but also gave the title its first ever clean decision victory. Number 9, 15% of all champions held the title for over 1,000 days. They say it's not the belt who makes the man, but the man who makes the belt. And the NWA's 1,000 club is made up almost entirely of men who wore the strap for its own good, rather than their own. Lou Thesz, Ric Flair, Harley Race, Dory Funk Jr., Dan Severn, Gene Kiniski, and Adam Pearce were all, in their own times, a vital cog in keeping the NWA machine moving. While these wrestlers were, of course, more than worthy, it was the NWA's rampant trust issues and financial decisions from wrestlers that was the driving force behind these long title reigns. Jeff Jarrett is the final, albeit slightly controversial member of the 4-digit club, but it is worth considering the relevance of the title during his title reigns. At the time, TNA represented a rebirth for the belt, and while things might not have been great in the company during that period, it's fair to say the belt itself did manage to regain a modicum of presence. Number 8, 4 champions held it for less than 24 hours. For all the NWA World Heavyweight Championship marathon men, there were some slightly less fortunate performers who barely had time to put it around their waist before they managed to lose it. Shane Douglas's instant dismissal of the belt in 1994 is perhaps the most infamous of these, but there are several other wrestlers who also have one-day title reigns attached to their record. Jack Veneno and Ray Gonzalez both had disputed reigns in 1982 and 2005 respectively, when victories in Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic were chalked off the very night that they actually bloody happened. Can you believe that? Not only that though, but the 1980s title steward Ric Flair also tasted controversy as a result. Ric Flair's loss to Jack Veneno was only booked to calm the rabid fans in the Dominican Republic, so obviously the NWA needed a kayfabe reason to give the title back to Ric Flair. They basically said that Veneno was unwilling to defend the belt outside of the Dominican Republic, and as a result, they then transferred the belt back to original champion, the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. Number 7, Raw or Truth Killings was the first African-American champion. It took 54 years for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship to end up in the lap of an African-American wrestler. Imagine a company taking that long to put their most prestigious title onto a black wrestler. Who would do that? Certainly not WWE. The NWA did come close to doing this half a decade earlier when Bobo Brazil defeated Buddy Rogers, but wouldn't you know it, the match was deemed null and void because Rogers apparently had an injury. Also, just a little tidbit for you, segregation was still very much a thing. What a coincidence. Nevertheless, Ron the Truth Killings would be the one to make history, and although his 2 runs with the title weren't exactly promoted very well, to be honest, it still seemed like TNA were trying their very best to right some of wrestling's racist wrongs. Number 6, it was the first ever wrestling title with a nameplate. These days, no sooner has the new champion been crowned, we get that lovely video from WWE where they show the old champion's nameplates being taken off and lobbed away, presumably in the bin or something, and then the new champion's brand is stamped into the belt. Their stamp on the brand new title they've just earned. But it wasn't always like this. Nameplates on titles weren't commonplace until the NWA Heavyweight title made it so in July 1973, albeit somewhat briefly. After a victory over Harley Race, Jack Briscoe's 500-day title reign was used as an opportunity to debut personalised little bits and bobs on the belt. For example, this one had red leather and, of course, the nameplates. Sadly, the nameplates were a casualty of war during Briscoe's title reign, and as a result, there was a few minor adjustments and tweaks made to the belt, like the return of black leather, and the previous gold plates were given a bit of a polish up. The nameplates, however, didn't make the cut. They were taken away, but there was some vacant screws left on the belt, which would remain there until the belt got a complete remodeling in 1990. Number 5, the Champion's Deposit. As agreed upon champion by the National Wrestling Alliance, despite the belt's place atop of WCW at the time, Ric Flair was financially bound to the title. Like every champion before him, Flair had to pay a deposit up front of $25,000, no less, which basically meant he kept a hold of the title, he was responsible for anything that happened to the title, and of course, that money would be returned to him on the proviso that the belt was returned or when they made a new champion. This was allegedly supposed to help maintain the integrity of the belt. However, a hefty financial disagreement that happened at the time hit the headlines when, contractually and creatively, there was a dispute between Ric Flair and WCW President Jim Herd, which essentially resulted in Flair leaving for WWE in 1991. Oh, and he also maybe had the belt with him as well. Herd's inexperience at dealing with matters at this top level cost him dearly here, and whether or not he knew about this caveat or not during his discussions with Flair, it didn't matter, because ultimately it resulted in Flair taking the NWA heavyweight title and mailing it straight to Vince McMahon ahead of his debut in the WWE later that summer. Number 4, Ric Flair donated the original title to WWE. Now, like it or not, 9 times out of 10, Vince McMahon will get the last and loudest laugh when it comes to matters in the world of wrestling, and that was no different when it came to the final resting place of the domed globe NWA World Heavyweight Championship belt. The strap that Cody sported at the end of All In was, like many aged titles, a replica of the original, because that particular piece of hardware is currently sat in Stamford, Connecticut, along with the rest of a collection that Vince McMahon and Triple H have slowly but surely accrued over the last few years. In a somewhat Groundhog Day moment, much like the events of 1991, Ric Flair would be the man who would deliver the NWA heavyweight title to Vince McMahon and his new collection, not because he was leaving WCW this time, but more because he had it in his personal collection and thought it would be a nice addition to the historical collection that McMahon was currently making. Number 3, Dusty and Cody Rhodes are the first father and son combination to hold the title. While the belt has almost more history than any other in the industry, Cody did manage to set a new record when he defeated Nick Aldis at All In for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Cody and Dusty Rhodes became legitimately the first ever father and son pairing to claim the prize. Now, obviously, there's been a few who have had a chance in the past, Fritz Von Erich and David Flair to name a few. However, none of these managed to follow in their father's footsteps and claim the 10 pounds of gold. It's one of the great intergenerational wrestling stories that almost never happened, actually. Dustin Rhodes had a chance before his brother twice to achieve this feat, once in WCW in 1991 and once in the mid-2000s with TNA, but his lack of company status in TNA and Ric Flair leaving with the belt back in 1991 meant that never happened. So to see his brother Cody leave WWE, gamble on himself, put on one of the most important and historic independent wrestling pay-per-views of all time in the form of All In, and then go on to become the NWA World Heavyweight Champion in just over 2 years, it's nothing short of incredible. Number 2, 60% of title changes took place on house shows. Considering the fact that the NWA World Heavyweight title has twice been owned by companies who run pay-per-views at least quarterly, at most monthly, it's amazing to see that the championship has at least partially been preserved as a ticket-selling tool first and foremost. Predating pay-per-view by a few decades, the belt often was shifted on non-televised events, which meant someone had to report that it had moved from champion to champion, and that usually happened through sports reports or, at the time, an embryonic wrestling magazine scene. Ric Flair's touring schedule throughout the 1980s provided several switches designed to sell televised or purchase-only rematches. The story, of course, here would be how on earth had the champion lost his belt and how was he going to get it back? This technique was deployed throughout the 2000s to kind of mixed success, to be fair. Indie stalwart Adam Pearce did manage to start 2 of his 300+ day title reigns in front of no cameras at all, a feat which was also achieved in 2016 by Tim Storm. And number 1, it has changed hands in WCW, ECW, TNA and New Japan, but never in WWE. In 1998, Jeff Jarrett alongside Jim Cornette, the Rock and Roll Express and the late Barry Windham formed the National Wrestling Alliance as a heel stable in WWE. Double J became the NWA North American Champion on Monday Night Raw, but the famous belt never actually came along for the ride in what was, to be fair, a pretty invasion angle. This all came about during the lengthy title reign of one Dan the Beast 7, and although he was soon to become a WWE full-timer himself, he never actually ended up defending the championship on McMahon turf. Outside of an extremely rare champion versus champion match which featured Bob Backlund and Harley Race back in 1979 and went to a draw, I should point out, the company has never really had an opportunity to promote a match of such magnitude that actually featured the 10 pounds of gold. So the fact that Cody managed to achieve this with All In and also managed to make the stakes for the match feel like the most important on the entire show is a fitting reminder as to why Cody is the perfect heir to guide the title back to mainstream relevance. And there you bloody have it. That's our video on the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. What did you guys think? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and share. And if you haven't already, hit that old subscribe button. Also, if you want some more videos, they should be floating around here somewhere. I'm Adam Nicholas, and I'll see you next time.